listening to the Secure AF Podcast.
Welcome to the Secure AF Podcast. I have Chad with me today. I'm Jonathan, and we're going to be talking about the CISO Showdown. Now, if you've never heard of the CISO Showdown, it's a competition between CISOs that we have at our primary conferences here in Oklahoma. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the history. We're talking about how it works. We'll be talking about the belt and all the fun things about the Showdown. So thanks for joining us. We're going to have a great time today. Chad, thank you so much for coming out and talking about this.
All right, absolutely.
We just did the Showdown. Did it in B-Sides here in Oklahoma in April. April, I think 3rd and 4th is the B-Sides conference and training. And the competition is pretty straightforward. It's two CISOs. They get on the stage. They don't know the questions that's going to be asked of them. They have a referee, and that referee moderates the questions and how to do the different parts. And then the audience gets to choose who is going to win. It was you and me and Jeff. Jeff was our moderator. He was our ref. And we had a good time. I had a good time. How about you?
I had a good time all the way up until the end.
Well,
but I'm having a hard time believing they're letting us sit here without a referee in between us.
This is true. That's tough. I did win. I am a 2-time CISO champion here in Oklahoma, so I'm very proud of that. But we really did have a good time. I thought the questions were really good. Gives us the ability to really test our knowledge and test our skill sets as being a CISO. The interesting thing is, in this one, was the audience got to ask the questions. And we hadn't done that before in this competition, but the audience in the conference who was in the room at the time, we went out on Discord, they asked the questions. Jeff would pick the questions he wanted to give us, and then we went back and forth and we competed. So tell me about your experience. What did you think of this previous competition?
Yeah, that was really cool. And this time having the live audience give us the questions. The neat part about that was you could go back and ask for clarification. It wasn't the kind of thing where you had to have a question completely clarified to start with.
Right.
That was easier to do in the ones where the people in the room would claim they were the ones that sent the question in. However, there were a few questions that nobody in the room claimed. Still a little bit curious where those came from. But,
I know where two of them came from. So
there were some submitted ahead of time. I know that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
right.
I really like that format. Now, every time we've done this, this is our fifth Showdown. We've done 2 a year every year. This is our 5th. And the contestants, the competitors, we never knew the questions. We would never know what the questions were, but we had to answer those questions on stage live. But in this situation, we decided to do a little different where not even the ref knew what the questions were. And it was submitted. Some of them were submitted beforehand. Some of them submitted the audience. And what I really liked about it was it pulled in that audience a bit more to the process and to really engaging us as CISOs. Now, there's always a danger because you never quite know what they're going to ask. And there was a couple of questions that I don't want to say stumped me. Yours, I think you intentionally gave me the question. So a special thing at the end of this particular one was we get to ask each other questions. And we didn't know this going into it. Our ref was having a little fun with us that day. That one, it took me a bit to answer, only because I knew I was going to make the audience mad. So... That was the thing that I knew they weren't going to like my answer, but I did it anyway.
But no, it was still a really good answer, and you're right. That was something different. Now, I have to back up just a little bit because of what you said. And our CISO Showdown, it always takes on the pro wrestling. We all have our own personas, and I didn't even bring my own persona today, but we all have our own personas about it. And the question that I got asked, I don't know how many times that day beforehand, I got asked, okay, is this really, do you all really not know the questions? Or is this like the real professional wrestling where it's all staged? And I said, no, we don't know. I said, I have no clue what's going to come up to me. I have no clue what anybody is going to ask. I don't know what the audience is going to come up with. I don't have plants in the audience.
Right.
It really is truly, it's all wide open.
It is.
And what I call it, anything you ever wanted to ask your CISO, but were afraid to ask.
Well, and that's exactly what it is. So let's talk a little bit about the history. We kind of led into why we're here today is because we just had the showdown. But let's talk a little bit about the history because it's really interesting how this came up. Kevin and I were on the phone one day, Kevin CISOK, who is a previous champion, and we were talking about actually capture the flags. When you go to a conference, there's always a capture the flag. There's always some sort of competition that the conference people will go and do. But there's never anything for CISOs.
And I have to admit, I'm one that I still to this day have never participated in a capture the flag contest.
Yeah. I mean, but that's not what CISOs do. I mean, we don't do that stuff. I mean, we can do some of it, but that's not our role. But we were talking about how do we demonstrate CISO skill sets? How do we demonstrate being a CISO? And so we kind of came up with, we were just having fun. And we just said, hey, let's get on stage and just duke it out, pro wrestling style. And that just spun into where we're at today. The more we talked about it, the more we thought about, well, okay, if we get up there to competitors and we ask questions or somebody asks us questions and then we figure out, by the audience who's going to win, who gave us the best question or best answer. And that just kind of dove right into the wrestling genre, getting up there and speaking in front of people, cutting promos. And it just turned into a thing. The first time we did it was BSidesOK 2023. And honestly, people loved it because it was different. And I think they really liked it because they got to choose the winner. The ref at the end of the match will say, okay, who's going to vote for this contestant? Who's going to vote for this one? And whoever wins, whoever gets the biggest applause and the loudest, they get to win. And they get to take home the belt. Now, the belt, I get this question all the time. Number one, why do we have a championship belt? And my
because it's cool.
Exactly, because it's cool. And who doesn't want a championship belt? And I'll tell you, after 8 hours of carrying around this is about 10 pounds. And you carry it around on your shoulder for 8 hours at a conference, and you don't want the belt.
And it feels like more like 45 pounds by the end of the day.
It does. It's big. It is cool. It's very bright. It gets people's attention. But we did it because we wanted to highlight, the champion. So we chose the belt as the person who wins it. They get to carry around the belt until they defend against it or they win the next one. And it's really interesting, at least from the point of view of how we impact people, because really the people my age, you're a little older than me, I think. I'm not quite sure.
Wait a minute. That didn't seem very fair, but okay.
But I grew up on wrestling. And I grew up watching, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and all that stuff. So this was like, this is a childhood fantasy for me of at least carrying around the belt. Winning the belt was a little different. But anyway, we talked about it. We did the first one, and the audience loved it. And so we started doing it every conference after that here in Oklahoma. We have 2 primary conferences in Oklahoma. We have BSides Oklahoma, and we have Information Warfare Summit. Those are our 2 free-ish Oklahoma conferences. And we've done it every conference since. So it's been a lot of fun, and I never really thought that this would take off. I figured we'd do it once or twice, and it would be done. But we've kept going. So when did you win it? You won it in would be fall of 24, right?
Right, last fall.
Okay.
At IWS.
Yep. So we've had 4 winners. We've had myself, Kevin CISOK, Jeff Story, and then Chad here. And we've all competed against one another. And then whoever is not competing that particular conference, they're the ref. So they get to be the ref. Now, the interesting thing about the ref is most of the time they get to choose the questions. which kind of sucks sometimes, especially when the person who's doing the question is the one that lost to you last time, that you never quite know which question you're going to get. But the very first one we did, I remember this, we asked ChatGPT the questions. Give me 10 questions that a CISO should know. And I really think that Jeff says, give me 10 hard questions a CISO would know. And that was the question he's at. And we flip a coin, person goes, whoever wins goes first, or whatever you do it. And you go back and forth, usually 3 or 4 questions. And you just have to answer it. Now, the way I've always told people, and I'd like to get your thought on this, I've always presented this as when a CISO goes into a board meeting or they get called into a leadership meeting, they don't know what's going to get asked of them. They don't know the content. Sometimes they don't know the topic. They're just said, hey, you need to be here. You need to answer questions. And that's kind of the feel of this, is you don't ever know, but you still have to be successful at it. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's a lot of things that go on like that. And even if you do have time to prepare for things in a board meeting or before a board meeting, one time I finally, it's like, okay, here's your chance. We want you to come talk to the board. The board wants to know what we're doing about ransomware, how we're combating this. And you should probably explain to them what ransomware really is too, because they may not know that. And it's, okay, so I put together this slide deck, probably, 15, 20 slides, just because I always use that crutch and it helps me give things a little bit of visual and all that. Well, I get in that day and get ready to talk to the board, and they say, okay, and Chad, you're first on the agenda. You have 5 minutes. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait a minute. I thought I had like half an hour to talk about this stuff. So here I am. So now I'm cramming this into 5 minutes, explaining what ransomware is and exactly what we're doing to combat it. So that's really pretty common.
Yeah.
And then the questions you get, you never know what you're going to get when you're sitting in a boardroom. Especially in that case, it was a board that was made up of community leaders, not necessarily, definitely not technical people, but just community leaders from all different communities and all different places and all different backgrounds. So some were technical, some were not.
Sure.
How do you meet all those?
But you have to be successful there. I mean, you have to show that when you walk into that boardroom or leadership or whoever you're talking to, you have to show them that you are the subject matter expert. You don't always have to know everything. That's not what we mean by that. Is you have to be the person that can answer their questions and be able to find the correct answers and get it out to people. Now, when we're talking about boards, that's a very formal process. Most of the time, it's a very formal process. You walk in, you're usually introduced. You have the agenda, like you have a time frame. But I've been in boards that I had no idea. They literally said, Jonathan, we need you over here right now. Okay, I walk in and I don't know what I'm getting myself into. In fact, I think it was about 2 weeks before the showdown, I got called into a board of one of my clients. I truly had no idea why I was there. I mean, I have no problem going to the board and explaining what we were doing and how, but they didn't give me any background. I walked in, I had never met any of their board. And I was sitting off to the side, and they says, okay, it's time to introduce our CISO, Jonathan Kimmitt. Get up there, and you stand in front of 30 people around the room, and you answer questions. And it could be anything. It could be, what are we seeing in terms of attacks? It could be what tools have you used? What things have you bought? What is your budget? What is security awareness? What are your risks? All those everything.
What's AI?
What is it? What's blockchain? As we were otherwise talking about blockchain earlier. But those are the things that we just don't know sometimes. Now, there's always the issue of you're walking down the hallway and someone catches you and is like, hey, what about this? We get those too, and those you have to be just as proficient in. But we always present the showdown as if you're walking into the board. Now, there are times in which we will put a theme on it, a particular theme, and or maybe an industry. So maybe it's healthcare industry or whatever. In fact, I want to say, was it yours that we chose, that the audience got to choose the industry?
We did, yeah. It was mine that we chose that because we started talking about these questions and how you answer questions and my answer is always the lawyer answer is it depends.
Sure.
And so I'm like, so why don't we assign a certain industry, and we're going to say we're from a certain industry when we're answering these questions. Okay, great. How do we do that? Let's let the audience decide. So we did. We put up a list. What did we put up a list of 5 or 6 different ones, and the referee just did a cheer. Or did somebody? I thought we let the audience choose.
We did. We let the audience choose, but I think I just called out because I was a ref that time. I was like, all right, which industry do you want? And there was 4 or 5 people that yelled. I picked the one that was the loudest.
Yeah, and it ended up being, what was it, higher education?
I think it was higher ed, yeah.
Yeah, which I have no clue about. All the other ones I'm all over, but higher education I had no clue about.
I was the ref, and so I got to have a little fun with the contestants this time, or that time. But, but that's the thing, though, because when you're talking about different industries, you really have different focuses. And a new CISO going into a new industry, they have to be able to switch their brain over to that industry and really focus on what's important. When we're talking about higher ed, your customers are your students. You're talking about healthcare, your customers are your patients. And they're the same from the controls we have to implement, but it's not necessarily the same focus. So you do have to kind of switch those different parts of your brain in and out. So I thought it was a lot of fun that day because we got some feedback from the audience in the middle of the showdown. But then that's really kind of what led to us in the spring of saying, what if we just let them ask the questions? Now, we had always figured out we were going to involve the audience as much as we could because we wanted to make this, we didn't want it to feel like it was staged. The audience gets to choose the winner. They get to choose, the topics or the questions, or we wanted to make it as real as we could. And then this last one, we decided to literally, we're going to put a Discord channel out. We're going to let people ask the questions live. And then the referee would get to, because there's going to be a lot of people there and get to choose through them. And it was a lot of fun. Now,
and whoever might have been there in person, the robotic dog was not planned either. We had a robotic dog came in and danced across the stage in the middle of it, and we didn't know that was happening either.
Yeah, we didn't know that, but we had to just continue on. Now, I will tell you the little secret on that. Apparently, Randy was walking down the hallway with the dog. And he sees us up on the stage and he says, "Hey, let's send the dog in." And the dog comes up on stage while we're in the middle of asking questions back and forth and answering. And then, of course, I try to bribe the dog and it took my money and threw it on the ground. There's all kinds of stuff that happened. So it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. And the questions I thought were interesting. It was a good variety of questions for us.
It really was.
Do you remember any of the questions that really stood out to you?
No. I think that's the other rule of being a CISO is you can ask me any question you want, but I'm going to answer the ones I want to answer. Yeah. So part of that is being able to twist those to what I want to answer.
Yes.
That is part of it. But no, I do remember in the one that you said was going to be the ugly one and the not popular one, and I did. I tried to stump you, and I told you had to answer it in less than 90 seconds. I don't know that you made that, but
yeah. Okay.
Do it quickly, but yeah, my whole thing was, we talk about the CISO needing a seat at the table. We talk about how do we, how do we grow more people to be CISOs and this kind of stuff, and what is your plan? How do we fill that workforce? The perceived workforce gap. I'm going to say. Yeah. But how do we fill that workforce gap and get the people in that we need to work in cybersecurity? And your answer, I thought, took the cake. I mean, honestly, that one was worthy of the belt for a little bit.
For a little bit.
But no, your answer was good on there, and I'll let you give it again.
Oh, I don't know if I can give it again.
Yeah,
so
I don't know if you don't remember what your answer was either.
I remember the answer, but so the ref threw in a kink at this particular one where he says, and normally when the ref would ask the questions. And then we get to throw in an inject, whatever we want, really just to make it complicated or make it fun. And in this case, the very last question, we got to ask each other, but we didn't get to prepare for it. So we had to make a question up on the fly and then ask the other person. And I have been told that I speak a lot and that I don't shut up. And so he gave me a qualification that I had to do it quickly. And I think I intentionally held the mic a little bit longer just to show you that I didn't, that I could not speak for a bit. Anyway, but the interesting thing on that one was I knew I was going to make the audience mad because I made the comment. I don't even remember exactly how I said it, but I said that not every organization needs a CISO. And it wasn't the fact that I want to get rid of CISOs. More importantly, I want to improve that security awareness or that security mindset in the whole organization. If you took everybody in that organization and lifted them up in terms of security awareness and attack awareness and all things we talked about, I think some organizations doesn't necessarily need a CISO. I don't want to put myself out of a job, but I think I would rather spend my time building up the whole organization in terms of what they're doing and getting the whole organization better than to put a CISO in somewhere that they're not going to be successful in.
Yep, and you're absolutely right, and I couldn't agree with that more. I've seen that on so many different levels. I've lived that before. I made fun of it a lot because I said, I'm a CISO and I have my own department, and I have my own division. I'm the only one doing security, period. I learned real quick that I'm not the only one doing security. That means I have to help the other 600 employees also be security minded. And I learned real quick that awareness can be your friend.
Sure.
And trying to get that word out to everybody else and to make sure that everybody knows that security is your job. That's important. Now, I also think that it's important to have somebody that's coordinating those efforts, whether you call them CISO or not. I've never held the title CISO.
Right.
Properly.
Right.
It was, Information System Security Officer is what it was really called, but, never the chief title. But I spent, 25, 30 years now being the person in an organization that's always responsible for security, which to me always meant making sure other people are responsible.
Sure.
I think that's one of the best things behind this CISO Showdown is it really shows, because especially these two events that we go to often are primarily practitioners. It's forgive me for saying so, but it's the nerds, and I'm self-proclaimed nerd. I'm fine with that. But the thing is the nerds speak nerd, and they think technically, and they don't think about how their actions impact the organization. And to me, this is a way of opening that up and seeing how do your technical decisions impact the organization.
Oh yeah.
And that really is the CISO's role. Is to, and I call it, whether you're calling it a nerd whisperer or a nerd interpreter, it works the same way.
Yep.
But they're really to be the interface between the business and security.
Right.
Now, if you don't need a CISO to do that, fine.
Sure.
I agree with you in that sense. Not every organization needs that, but every organization does need that person that can help be that go-between.
And that's I like the way you said it because it really is that CISO role or that job or that function of the CISO. In most organizations, there are some CISO roles that aren't that role. They don't do that. But in most organizations, they are that in-between of leadership and IT and the engineers, and they've got to be able to talk all those different languages and all the different pieces to be able to go and speak to them. Because what you're doing as a CISO, at least my point of view, is you're convincing people to do something different. Yes, you're convincing them to have good passwords. Yes, convincing them to have multi-factor authentication, to run better firewalls, to do log analysis, to do incident response, all the things
and
that we
to like
do.
It.
And, yeah, absolutely. So that's our job. Now, in the case that you don't have that, they're also the people that go configure firewalls and they deploy EDR and they do all these things. But you really want to be the one that is talking to everyone and convincing them to do something different. That is where I feel like the strength of a CISO is. And you're right. That's what I wanted the CISO Showdown to be is we get to go out there in front of a large group of people. Now, we've had rooms of 400 and 500, 600 people that we have to get up there and we have to convince them, number one, that we're a better CISO than the other person. Which, here's the reality. All the CISOs that go up there, they're all great CISOs. I may be the one that's holding the belt right now. I'm the current CISO champion. But
how many more times can you work that into this
Oh,
conversation?
I'm going every single time I
Just
can.
making sure.
2 times CISO champion. Make sure you get 2 times. That's going to be the title of this podcast. The 2-time CISO champion and Chad.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
No, but the reality is every one of us, we have hard jobs. We go in and we make sure that our organizations are safe, our people are secure, we have private data, all those different things. We all do it. And we all like it. We all enjoy it. And that's why I think all of us who have gotten up there, that have won this belt, they are fantastic CISOs. The fact that they got up there and they won the belt is a recognition of that. But the other interesting thing about it is, how many times have you gotten someone who saw the showdown and came up and says, I didn't know that's what you did. I didn't know you guys had that kind of problem to deal with. I get it all the time. Still, I get it all the time. Where they're like, I didn't think that that's what CISOs did. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. And then some. So I think it really helps. It spreads people to, it spreads what we do as CISOs to everybody. And I think those 2 audiences, now we've done the showdown at Tech on Taps, and we've done stuff just for fun, dark matches and stuff that wasn't for the title. But every single time, my goal is to convince people in the audience to think differently about something, whether it's some security thing we're doing or the way CISOs think about stuff. I had this guy who came up to me. This would have been, I think this is the year I lost it to Kevin. No, I lost it to Jeff. So when Jeff won, I was letting him have his celebration on stage because he had won. I think he stole it, but fine. Anyway, but he was having his thing, and I had stepped off the stage. I was walking down and around. And this gentleman comes up to me, and he pulls me aside. He goes, man, I'm about to graduate with a PhD in cybersecurity. My goal is to be a CISO. I think I got screwed because I don't know how to do anything that you guys just did up there. And I really wasn't sure how to answer him on that. So I pulled him aside and we talked for about 20 minutes. But the skills that we were demonstrating up there, and it's not just getting in front of people and talking, it's you're given a scenario that you have to answer, and you have to come up with a plan, a process to be successful at it. And then you've got another person over there throwing an inject in, like, this person's sleeping with that person, now what do you do? And you got to go, well, okay, now I've got to figure out how to do that. So, but those troubleshooting skills, people aren't learning. People don't know how to do. And I don't know how do we teach people that other than show them? But what do you think we should do as an industry to teach people who are coming up through the ranks what we do as a CISO?
Yeah, and that's a great point, and it's something that I've really pushed hard on a lot, is to learn more of the soft skills that are involved with it. And I'm definitely not going to say I've got the softest skills out there. But we've got to realize that the soft skills are important.
Yes.
And I wish I had survey numbers in front of me, but I actually just pulled this up on a presentation the other day in the latest ISC2 workforce study, and they showed that that soft skills, your communication skills and things like that, are some of the most sought after things that hiring managers are looking for when hiring just cybersecurity professionals, not necessarily CISOs, but learning how to actually, how to convey that, how to communicate these things to the business. And what I was talking about, being that nerd translator and being in the middle of it is really more important than you realize. Yeah. And I think the big thing behind that is that now the bad guys are realizing that, technology, encryption technology, things to keep you out, it's up there. The technology's great. So, you know what? We really can't break that technology. So let's go after the people. Yeah. So when we have to start looking at things like that, and now that's when we've got to bring the level of our people up and make sure. And if we're not reaching, if we're not meeting the people where they are, we're going to fail. Yeah. And that's kind of the way it is, the bottom line. And you asked earlier about some of the things that we had as far as the questions we had. And I don't know if you saw the look I got out of the audience when we started talking about, for some reason, blocking websites. And I don't remember which one it was now. You probably do.
Oh, I do, yeah.
But we started talking about blocking websites. And my response was, okay, number one, why in the world are you blocking that? Is there a legitimate business reason to block that website, or is there not?
Yeah.
And the looks in the room were like, why would we allow it? I'm like, but is there a business reason to block it?
Well, yeah. And I think that's a big issue, because I go to a lot of my organizations that do block a lot of different websites, which is fine. That's their policies. But I've been in organizations where those things were not blocked. In fact, they were specifically protected in the ethics code. And so you have to balance that. And I remember which one it was. We're not going to talk about it.
I was going to say, now ethics is a different story, but yeah.
Because I threw an inject in there that I thought was really funny. I don't think anybody else thought it was funny.
It's not as funny on the receiving end.
Yeah. But you were the champ, though. I wanted the belt. No, but those are the difficulties that we run into. And you have to think about that. I bet you everybody in that room was like, yeah, just block it. We can just block it, thunk. But now you've got policy issues, and you've got free speech issues, and you have all kinds of different things. And depending on the organization, you might have things that prevent you from blocking that.
Yeah.
So that does come into play. Now, you were talking earlier about some of the soft skills. Other than the fact of being up on stage, which I will tell you, I don't like being up on stage. I don't like speaking in front of people. I do it because it's my job, and I want to be successful at my job, and I enjoy my job. But aside from that, because that is a whole different thing of, introvert, extrovert, or whatever, what do you think is the best process or a good way of helping people learn those soft skills to be able to do this job? What are some things they can do?
We talked about that. I think the last time we talked about that, I didn't have a good answer for you. So I know
I should have asked that in the chant.
I know. I come up with a different question. I come up with a different answer every time. But I'm going to tell you the way I did it. I know the way you did it. You can tell that story here in a minute, and that's fine. I'll tell you the way I got over it. And the strangest part is, to me, when you go talking at a conference like that, you're talking to the people that probably know more than you do.
Yeah.
And that's always a little bit of a tough thing to swallow. And there's a little bit of imposter syndrome going on, and you name it. But I think the thing that did the most for me was I actually put together some things, and I went out talking to grade schools and middle schools across western Oklahoma about cybersecurity and just some of the basic things. And that really opened my eyes, and I didn't realize how much need there was out there just for that kind of thing.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And how much those kids really wanted to learn. Now, don't get me wrong, the high schoolers, they didn't care. Middle schoolers, they're fun. You get the younger ones, I can guarantee I got some questions from fourth graders that I never expected to come from a fourth grader. But they will definitely teach you how to think on your toes.
Yeah, yeah.
If you can handle a room full of fourth graders, you can handle anything.
Yeah, that's true. I certainly get that. I've been around my share of younger people because we were in a K through 8 at my previous location. So I go in there and I talk to those students, and sometimes I had to scare them. Sometimes I had to get them to where they were doing good things. But I like that. I was thinking about that. Of course, I'm not going to go into, even though he made fun of my whole acting thing. But one of the things...
Did not make fun of it.
No. It was successful. It worked for me. Okay. So, I don't like being in front of people. And I speak 300 times, 400 times, throughout the year for different things, different sessions and such. And I took an acting class in college, and I'll tell you, that's one of the best things that I ever did on learning how to become that person I need to be for the situation. And it's really helped me, and it's helped other people that I've told that to. But I think for a lot of people to do our job, to be that security professional, one of the things that I encourage people to do is just learn. If you're going to be that subject matter expert, you need to have that subject matter in your head. and going and learning and absorbing and seeing and asking questions. That's one of the things that I did when I first became a CISO. Is I went to every conference I could get to. Every time someone spoke at a chapter, anything like ISSA or InfraGard, I wanted to be there. I wanted to learn. Because the more you do that, the more you absorb, and then the more you can turn around and give to other people. So I spent a lot of time just learning, and I still do. In fact, you and I were talking about earlier about some certifications that I'm working on currently. And part of that is I want to continue to learn. I want to continue honing the skill sets that I have and get better and better so I can help my customers and I can help my clients and things. But I really encourage people when they're starting in this field to just go learn. Learn as much as you can. Go out there and speak to people and ask questions. I love it when people come up and ask questions after the showdown or after I speak or after I present something, because they're curious. They want to know. They want to get better. And if I can help with that, absolutely, But the other thing I think is really important for us in this profession is to understand what our profession is. What do we do? Because I see a lot of security professionals, they just want to do the technical stuff. And I that's not what we do anymore. It's the people side. At least that's what I think.
No, you're absolutely right. I've been screaming, people skills and soft skills from a mountaintop for a long time. The reality is not everybody wants to be a CISO either.
Yeah.
There is that, there's that premonition out there that there's some that believe that everybody who's in cybersecurity has an ultimate goal to be in a CISO, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
Some people are perfectly happy being that technical person. Some people are happy being a technical leader. And, my whole thing is you can lead wherever you are in the organization.
Sure.
Doesn't matter
Sure.
if you hold that CISO title or not.
Yeah.
Just lead by example, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, and be that person that everybody thinks you are.
Yeah.
But actually be that person and learn to communicate that.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But that's the biggest thing is learning to be on the same level as whoever you're talking with.
And I think that's a skill set that people don't really think about. And it's odd because we have a whole aspect of our industry that is just social engineering. They go out and they social engineer for pen tests or for a variety of other reasons. And yet, if you ask someone to go to a board, if you ask a technical person to go to a board meeting, they have difficulties in it. Here's an example. This was an IT person. This was an IT security.
Wait, do we have time for this now?
Oh yes, we're gonna have time for this. I may get kicked off the podcast, but we're gonna talk about this story. No. We had an engineer. There's a senior level engineer. They went to a leadership meeting in one of my past organizations in a T-shirt that was stretched out at the neck, torn jeans, and flip flops. And he had to go and change the mindset of the leadership. And I can guarantee you 100% that the leadership never heard a word that person said, because they were just thinking about the disrespect that person showed by walking into the room looking like that. Now, I'm not saying that the way the person looked or how they dressed means anything about their skill sets. But what it does show is they weren't aware of how they were having an effect, or the effect they were having on the people in the room. And from a social engineering point of view, you were doing things to manipulate that other person into doing something for you. When you go on a date, you go for a job interview, you go for a bank loan, you dress nice. You dress to show respect to the person because you're trying to get them to do something for you. As a CISO, we do that. There are times when I go into a board meeting and I'm going to be in a suit and tie. There are times where I will call up and say, okay, I'm going to be at this conference or this training session. What are they wearing? I need to know because I want to dress like them. I want them to feel a connection to me. And if I dress way out of their comfort zone, that is not going to be something that they're going to feel comfortable asking me questions or engaging me. Instead, I look at that, okay, how do I have to dress? How do I have to talk? How do I have to engage to convince them to do something different? that soft skill, understanding how to look at your target, imagine how you have to change to make an impact on them, I think is critical to everything we do. And I think that goes for any security professional position in the industry. You might be a firewall engineer, but you still have to go talk to people because you have to open up firewall ports and you have to do this, you have to do audits, whatever. You have to engage them in a way that they feel comfortable. And I think that that's some of the things that we're missing in our industry is how to teach people those skill sets.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I noticed back there a little bit you used the word target. Talking like a social engineer there in targets.
Well, it is.
But yeah, absolutely. Rule number one in cybersecurity and really in most things is know your audience. Know who you're talking to, know what point you're trying to get across, and know who you're trying to get to and why.
Yep.
If you don't know your audience, you're probably not going to get anywhere. And if you can't speak at the same level as your audience, you're probably not going to connect with them.
Yeah. I mean, we have to do the same thing to engineers. When we go into an engineer's, I did a conference last year, and there was literally rocket scientists in the room. That's what they were. They were aeronautical engineers and rocket scientists. It was great. They had great questions. They're clearly smarter than I was, but I was up there talking about AI and whatever. But I got up there and I says, just FYI, this is the scariest place for a CISO to be. I know you're all smarter than me. And they all kind of chuckled and they laughed. I was like, no, I'm serious. But then I was that SME for AI for them. So I was able to answer the questions. It was a great interaction. But you do have to know who your audience is.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I sat in front of a group here in Oklahoma City not too long ago, and exactly that. I'm doing a talk about AI and critical thinking in front of a bunch of Department of Defense people.
Wow.
That was a lot of fun. Now, they had a lot of cool stories about AI.
Sure.
But never put it in the context of critical thinking and how how you have to think about how you're using it.
Wow. We're running low on time, and I do want to. There is one more aspect that we've got to cover very quickly for the showdown, and that's our weapons. So anybody that competes in the showdown, they have to have some version of a weapon. And so tell me about your weapon.
Yeah, my weapon it's kind of, I should have brought it with me today and I didn't, darn it. My weapon is actually a step ladder. It's a little baby 2-step ladder, but it's got to be portable, right? And we all know how the professional wrestlers love to use that ladder to jump off the top. Well, they wouldn't let me do that for some reason. I don't know, they're afraid it's going to hurt myself. But
your wife was there. I think she was worried about it.
Yeah, she was probably worried too. You're right. But anyway, it's a ladder. And so what do you do with a ladder? Well, you do what anybody else does. You ask AI to make something up for you. And I chose the best one. And I'm like, I can't beat that. I mean, can you beat a ladder that's called privilege escalation?
Yeah.
To me, it was just the best way to go with it. But that's only because there were a few other ones that were pretty darn good that were taken.
Yeah, so mine is a steel chair. It's called chair at the table because the CISO is always trying to get a seat at the table, of the board meeting or whatever. So we've got a steel chair that I use. We've got one person that's got a 2x4 that he carries around, and that's his board member. That's his support. Is his board member. And then we have a chain. Kevin has a chain. That's a kill chain. So we have a lot of fun. And the thing about this is we enjoy the showdown. We enjoy getting out in front of people for all the reasons we've talked about in this podcast. The weapons and the belt, those are just the fun parts. These are to get people's attention. I'll tell you, when anybody wears the belt in a conference, people are going to get drawn to you. It's bright, it's shiny, and people want to take pictures of it. But you know what? One of the things is we always talk about the showdown. We always talk about the things that are happening as a CISO. And we're carrying around a chair all day. Number one, I like it because I can just sit down anywhere I am. But the other thing is people are like, why do you have a steel chair? I was like, I'm going to go win the showdown. And they're like, oh, we're going to go watch. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I got a whole lot more interest out of the belt than you got out of the chair, but anyway.
Yeah, well, this is you mean my belt?
Yeah,
I do
well,
appreciate you
yeah.
keeping my belt safe for a couple of months until I got it back.
It's okay. You can have it for a couple more months.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chad, thank you so much for joining us today at the Secure AF podcast. This has been a lot of fun. I hope everyone out there who is in Oklahoma gets a chance to come out to either BSides or IWS and catch the showdown. We are going to continue doing it. We do need some more CISOs to compete. So if you're a CISO here in Oklahoma and you're interested in getting up there and doing all the stuff that we just talked about, come and talk to us. Find us on LinkedIn. I will have pictures of the belt up because I am the 2-time CISO Oklahoma Showdown champion. So it's just keep it 2-time.
Did you get 2? Okay.
Yeah, two.
Okay.
Yeah, that means I've won twice. All right, thanks everyone. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time on the Secure AF podcast.
The Secure AF podcast is a production of Alias Cybersecurity. Visit us online at aliascybersecurity.com. All rights reserved.